Hello everyone, my name is Julia Yukohiro, and today we're gonna talk about the American literature classic The Catcher in the Rye by Salinger. The novel was published in 1951, and basically it narrates the story of the protagonist Holden Caulfield, who is a teenager who gets expelled from his school Pensy Prep. At Pensy Prep, Holden has a roommate, Stradlater, and Stradlater takes Jane Gallagher on a date. Jane Gallagher was a girl that Holden used to know in the summer, and this is going to be relevant to our topic today. Throughout the book, Holden Caulfield believes that adults are phony, and he can definitely relate more to children. Alright, so let's talk about the author Jerome Salinger. He was born in New York, in the US, and basically that's where some of the story takes place after Holden gets expelled from Princey Prep, and he basically just wanders around New York. Salinger actually drops out of University of New York, and then after a while he enrolls at the Columbia University, where he meets an important person with Burnett, his professor that taught a writing course, and he actually becomes a mentor and encouraged him to become a writer. So in this video, we're going to discuss Holden's attachment to childhood and innocence while trying to deny adulthood, and also his coming of age process through metaphors in the book. I'm also going to discuss Holden's self realization and development, especially at the end of the novel, through another metaphor. Something that is quite surprising to me is that such an incredible and famous novel, The Catcher in the Rye, doesn't have a movie adaptation. And the reason why is that the author writes, and I state, and I quote, for me, the weight of the book is in the narrator's voice. He can't legitimately be separated from his own first person technique. So basically, he states that movie adaptations cannot quite represent Holden's voice. So basically, because we don't have a movie adaptation, we don't have as much images as we could. So basically, that's why I decided to draw some of the passages of the book, especially the metaphors, so we can better visualize the context and also understand it. Alright, so let's talk about the metaphors in The Catcher in the Rye. There's the duck's metaphor. While talking to Mr. Spencer, his teacher, he thinks about the Central Park South and where do the ducks go when winter comes. And he states, and I quote, I was wondering where the ducks went when the lagoon got all icy and frozen over. And there's basically a repetition of this metaphor throughout the novel. And about the duck's metaphor, scholar O'Hara talks about how, and I quote, we are shown an innocent in danger, a threat, and a potential savior. So basically, the ducks are the innocent creatures that need to be saved from the winter, and Holden is a potential savior. So we can see in this passage that Holden's pretty much afraid of the winter, afraid of change, afraid of the future, and how are those innocent creatures going to face those struggles, gonna face their winters. And it's exactly the situation that Holden is in. He's afraid of the future. He's afraid of to face actually his struggles, especially with his dead brother Ellie. Holden, just like the ducks, need to survive and face his difficulties. So basically, the duck's metaphor is a reflection of himself. Alright, so let's talk about the character Jane Gallagher, the one in the image right here. Jane Gallagher is introduced to us because Holden's roommate Stradlater actually takes her on a date. And Holden used to spend his summer in Maine with her because she was his neighbor. And they used to play golf, they used to play tennis, and they used to play checkers. And one unique aspect about her that Holden points out is that she always used to keep her kings in the back row while they were playing checkers, as you can see in the image. So before Straller takes Jane on a date, Holden asks him, and I quote, ask her if she still keeps all her kings in the back row. And the fact that Holden asks Stradlater if Jane still keeps her kings in the back row in checkers is because somehow this gesture brings him a sense of comfort and security. It's like if she still keeps her kings in the back row, it means she didn't change, and Holden is clearly afraid of change, and he's projecting his own insecurities about his fear of the future onto her. He is afraid that Jane will lose her beauty and innocence to Stradlater. In a way, by asking these questions to Stradlater, what he basically is doing is he's just trying to immortalize an image of her that he had from his childhood. Just like another character is pretty much immortalized in Holden's memory, his dead brother Ali. And it's not only me saying that. Scholar Eero Helenius talks about, and I quote, Holden strongly associates Jane with childhood and by extension innocence and immediately becomes despondent at the thought of Stradlater tainting Jane's with his sexual presence and behavior. So basically, the checkers game is a metaphor for Holden's attempt to hold on to purity and innocence, which is symbolic of Jane. And also his denial that Jane can grow up and people can grow up and do things that adults do. So it's basically also a denial of growing up. All right, so let's talk about another metaphor, the title itself, The Catcher in the Rye. So the title refers to a scene where Holden envisions him just catching children in the field of rye so they don't fall into the abyss. The children's fall into the abyss is basically a representation. It's very symbolic of the loss of their innocence, the loss of their purity and childhood. And Holden tries to prevent this process to happen. He basically tries to prevent their coming of age process, them to grow up. So what he's doing is basically acting like a savior, just like he tried to save the ducks. He's trying to save the children. And even though this fall is necessary and very healthy for their, development process, it basically reflects his own denial to grow up and mature. And it's not only me saying that. Scholar Eero Helenius states, and I quote, and his point is basically that the main character's relentless drive to cling on to the notion of childhood and innocence, and is definitely reflecting on on the title itself and his envision for him to be the catcher in the rye. All right, so we talked about a lot of metaphors that indicates Holden's denial to grow up and basically to cling on to innocence in childhood. But there's a final metaphor that shows his self actualization and also his development and coming of age process. The carousel metaphor at the end of the novel is a recognition of his coming of age process. Phoebe actually ends up in a carousel and basically Holden watches her from afar. The carousel definitely represents notion of childhood and innocence, so Phoebe goes in it because she's a child. But Holden actually finally acknowledges that he cannot go in it, and his refusal basically to go in the carousel is basically a self-realization that he has to mature. People have to mature. People have to grow up. People have to come of age. Otherwise, if he actually went on the carousel, he would be an incomplete adult. Holden's recognition of this self-actualization actually happened in, and I quote, if they want to grab for the gold ring, you have to let them do it. And not say anything if they fall off. They fall off. But it's bad if you say anything to them. So that's in page 190. And it's not only me saying that. Scholar Vanderbilt talks about, and I quote, he sees the innocent children in danger of falling off from the circling carousel as they reach for the stationary gold ring, but the moment suddenly becomes also for Holden the instant of revelation. So what he's basically saying is that Holden cannot be their savior. He cannot be the protector to break from the fall from childhood to adolescence and maturity. All right, so we talked about some metaphors about the ducks, Jane Gallagher, the title itself, The Catcher in the Rye, and also the metaphor about the carousel, which kind of sums up why this novel is a coming of age novel. All right, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. And any questions or comments, please comment down below. And all the references and works cited are linked in the description. Thank you once again. Bye.